The reduce array method is a useful array method that can be a little scary and a little hard to understand. So let's break it down. Let's look at what that reduce array method is doing so that we can use it in our projects. If we have an array, we can call the reduce method on that array, give it a callback function, and it will take an array of items and reduce it down to one value. For example, if we have an array of numbers, we can reduce it down to the total of all of the numbers. Or we could reduce it down to the highest of all of the numbers. Reduce can take an array of many items and reduce it down to one item. Now, in both of these examples, we were working with numbers, but you do not have to use it with numbers. You can use it with any type of data. For example, this is an array of names. Maybe these are the names of my friends. I have friends. We could reduce this array down to all the first letters of everyone's name. And maybe I'd get that as a tattoo because these people are real and they're my friends. Let's look at how we can use the reduce array method to get things done. When you use the reduce array method, there are two spots that you need to fill in: the array that you want to reduce and a callback function that is used by reduce. That callback function should have two parameters and it should return something. Usually that callback function is not written as a normal function. It's usually written as an arrow function, and even more commonly as a one-line arrow function. This is the same function as the two previous ways of writing it, just written in a more succinct way, which often works nicely with the reduce array method. Now, in this example function, I have called the two parameters last return and array item, but it's up to you to pick what you want those parameters to be named. Often in examples using reduce, they'll be named something like previous value and current value, or accumulator and value, or total and number. Right now, we're going to call them last return and array item to help us remember what goes into these parameters. The array item parameter gets the array item we're currently looking at, whereas the last return parameter gets what was returned from the last call to this function, which means that something over there at the end of this function, that is what was returned, that is what gets passed into that next call. So it goes from the return of the previous call to this function into that last return parameter, or whatever you have named that first parameter. For example, if the reduce array method calls this callback function with the third array item, whatever was returned from the call with the second array item will go into that last return parameter. One way of visualizing this would be like this. We have a bunch of calls to that callback function. Each one is getting an array item and whatever came out of, whatever was returned from the previous call. Two parts we need to fill in is what happens to what is returned from the last call to the callback function, and that is returned by the entire reduce method. So whatever comes out of that last call with the last item in the array, whatever is returned from that will get returned by the entire reduce method. The second part we have to fill in is what goes into that first call to the callback function. What fills that last return parameter when there is nothing that was last returned because this is the first time calling the callback function? Well, there are two options. The default option is for reduce to not call the callback function with the first item in the array and instead pass that in as the last return parameter to the call with the second array item. The other option is to give reduce an initial value. This way it will call the callback function with that first item, and last returned will be filled with whatever we give as an initial value. In order to give it initial value, we have to give it a second parameter, initial value. Let's see this in action. Let's look at how we could use reduce to reduce an array of prices down to one number, the total of all of the prices. We know we're working with the prices array. Now we just need to fill in what our callback function should be. Remember, this callback function will be called with each item in the array, and what is returned will be passed to the next call. Here is a template that we can use to write our callback function. We know that the array item is going to be a price, so we can call that price. Then we need to decide what we are going to pass between each call to this function. What will go into that last return variable, and what will we return that will then go into the next call's last return variable. In this instance, it probably makes sense to be keeping track of the current running total. So we will call last return total. You could call it current total or running total. We'll just call it total. And then we want to return the updated total based on this price. So we will return total plus price. We fill that into our call to reduce, and let's walk through what will happen when we run it. On that first call, 8 will be passed in as the total and 7 as the price. Total plus price, 15, and 15 is returned from the first call to our callback function, and then 15 is passed into that second call as the total. So total will be 15 and price will be 2. 15 plus 2, 17. That is what is returned. And again, it is passed into that next call. And we get 27, 32, 47, 48. And 48 is returned by the entire reduce method, which is the total of all of the prices. So we successfully took an array of prices and reduced it down to a total using the reduce array method. Let's do it again. This time we're going to try to find the highest price in that array. So again, we're working with that prices array, but we need to write a new callback function. The callback function is really what decides what reduce actually does. The array item is still going to be a price. We can leave that as a price. But this time we probably want to be tracking the highest price we've found so far. So I will call that current highest. And then we want to return whichever one is highest, current highest or the price. There's a lot of different ways to write this. I am going to use the math.max function. It's a helpful little function that will return whichever number is highest between the numbers that you give it. You could also write this with an if or a ternary operator, but this works great for me. So we pass that callback function into the reduce method, and let's walk through what happens. On that first call, 8 gets passed into the current highest parameter and 7 into the price parameter. We run math.max with 8 and 7, and 8 is the bigger number, so 8 is returned, which is again passed into the next call. We're now comparing 8 and 2. 8 is bigger, 8 and 10. 10 is bigger, 10 and 5, boop, boop, bop. And 15 is returned by the entire reduce method, which is the highest price. So again, we did it. We reduced an array of numbers down to the smallest number using the reduce array method. Let's make it a little harder. More commonly, our data is not stored in arrays of numbers, but instead in arrays of objects. Right here, we have an array of dish objects that have information about different dishes, maybe at a restaurant, and we want to figure out what is the highest price of any dish. If I go to this restaurant and order the most expensive thing on the menu, how much will I pay? To visualize this, we will be showing dish objects with just that price property because that's the only one that we care about. So we have an array of dish objects and we want to figure out the price of the most expensive dish. We know we're working with the dishes array. Now we need to write our callback function. But we can refer to the callback function that we wrote when we were just reducing an array of prices. We shouldn't call our second parameter price anymore because it isn't going to be given a price. It's going to be given a dish object. So we'll rename that to dish. And then over in the math.max where we're using price, we need to instead access the price property on that dish object using the dot notation, dish.price. Let's try it. We pass that into our reduce method, and let's see what happens. In our first call, current highest is filled in with the first item in the array, the dish with the price of 8, and dish is filled in with the second item in the array, the dish with the price of 7. We call math.max, dish.price is filled in with 7, and current highest is filled in with a dish object. And we get a big old not a number because we asked math.max to find the higher of an object and a number. Math.max has no idea how to do that, so it returns not a number, and not a number is returned to that first call, which means it's passed into the next call, which means this one will also return not a number, and we just have a nan-splosion through our code, and not a number is returned from our reduce array method. That's not what we want. We've got to fix that. Luckily, there is a pretty easy way to fix this. We just have to tell it to use the second option for how to handle that last returned variable on the first call. We need to give it an initial value. The way we do that is by passing a second parameter to the reduce array method. In this instance, we're going to use 0 as our initial value. You want to make sure that you pick an initial value that will run correctly in reduce's first call to your callback function. So in this scenario, I am calling math.max with my current highest parameter. So I need to make sure it's a number, and I need to make sure it's small enough that it won't beat out an actual dish price. So I know 0 is lower than all of my dish prices, so that's going to be a good initial value. If, for example, I was trying to find the cheapest price on the menu and I was using math.min, then 0 would not be a good initial value, because if I do math.min with 0 and any other number, if it's a positive number, 0 is going to win, and then it will overwrite our other dish prices and we'll get 0 returned from reduce. So make sure when you are picking the initial value that it's a value that is going to make sense for how you are using reduce. Let's try this now. So now when we make our first call to our callback function, 0 gets filled in as current highest. The dish with the price of 8 gets filled in as dish. We call math.max with 0 and 8. They are numbers, beautiful. And we get 8 out. That's perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. Our 0 didn't cause any issues. It just made sure that first run went correctly. We go to the second call. Now we're working with 8 and 7. 8 is higher. 8, 8, 10, 15, 15, and 15 is returned by our entire reduce method, and it worked. So if we are reducing an array of dish objects down to the highest price of any dish object, we can use this line of code. Now I have a challenge for you. We looked at how to reduce an array of prices down to the total of all of those prices. We looked at how to use reduce with an array of dish objects. Can you write a call to reduce that reduces an array of dish objects down to the total of all of their prices? Go forth and reduce.